What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Consciously Curious, where we deep dive with those that are thriving in their passion. In this episode, we're going to dive into Oriental medicine, Chinese medicine. We have Dr. Ryan Ruiz, doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And we talked about this just now, but do you prefer doctor or don't care when people call you that?
It doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter?
It helps in a hospital setting because the patients seem to respond better to doctor than, hey, what is your title? Licensed acupuncturist?
Right.
Doctor's just easier.
A lot of other practitioners deal with that, like physician assistants deal with that, I'm sure.
But for my ego, I don't need the title.
Good for you.
I just want people to call me Ryan because I want to be able to relate to people.
Yeah.
I don't want that necessarily that power.
There's a barrier.
Dynamic.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
Because we're the loving, feel good doctors, right?
I feel that. In your own words, can you kind of break it down to those that are listening of what you do on a day-to-day basis?
On a day-to-day basis, I am using the Chinese system of diagnostics to figure out imbalances in a person's being that might contribute to disease or pain, because it's a holistic medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So we see the organs as separate but also connected entities in the body.
Okay.
So if your organs are all jiving correctly and happily and their relationships are in sync, then you're healthier overall. So if you have pain, we try to focus on the pain, but we also will balance your entire biome to try to make you healthier overall so you heal faster. So it's a...
And is that something that Western medicine is lacking?
I like to say that where I think Western medicine gets it wrong is they have experts in each organ, right? Which is fantastic. They're great at surgeries and emergency medicine. But when it comes to overall generalized health, they might miss the mark a little bit. So say I'm a specialist of the digestive system.
Right.
I will give you a bunch of drugs to affect your digestive system, but you get all these side effects that affect your liver, your kidney, your heart.
So you're kind of just treating signs and symptoms and not necessarily the whole thing.
Which is a big reason why I didn't go toward that medicine, was I didn't want to contribute to the pharmaceutical-driven medicine where everything's in a pill form.
Sure.
And I saw that as Band-Aids, right? You're chasing symptoms. You're not trying to get to the root cause.
Yeah.
And I found through acupuncture, I'm able to treat the root and subsequently the branches of a disease.
And how early on in your life did you realize you wanted to dive into Oriental medicine?
Oh, man. Well, I'm 41 now. I was probably 28, 29.
Okay.
28, 29 when I got the bug. But
so let's if we were to take it back to college,
what
did you at that time? What did you think you were gonna do?
So I was a photojournalist before I got into this. But before that, I studied biology because I love anatomy, physiology. I love just animals and plants and just life forms, right? The complexity of it.
So you did it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Whereas I went into biology because I had to go pre-med. I was pre-med, so it was just do biology.
That was a thought. I was going to go pre-med, and then when I saw it going down that path of what Western medicine is, that pharmaceutical-driven medicine,
right.
I didn't want to contribute to that.
Okay.
And so I shifted gears. I was always a photographer. I had a camera in my hand since I was 13. My mom or my uncle was gifted an old film camera, and he didn't know how to use it. So he's like, "Here, you play with this."
Fun.
And I just ran with it and loved it. And then I got kind of a real-world education just working in retail.
Okay.
Like big box stores. Like, can I say?
Say whatever.
Home Depot. I worked at Home Depot from the time I was 20 to 28.
Yeah. I still haven't had a Home Depot hot dog.
You're better off for it.
Okay.
They're actually really delicious, but they're suspect where that meat's coming from.
That's funny.
But yeah, that was my taste of corporate America as a working cog, right? As just the lowly
in a wheel,
employee,
right?
Yeah. And I knew I didn't want to be in that, so I realized that for me, money wasn't as important as me enjoying what I do, right? So that's why I pursued photojournalism. I was like, am I going to be an art photographer? I'm like, then I'll be really poor and destitute, right? So a journalist makes a tiny bit more than an artist, unless you're, you really get a name for yourself as an artist. Nothing against.
So, and where did that, let's just sidebar,
Yeah,
where did the
sidebar.
photojournalism take you?
It took me kind of to some really interesting places. I mean, I'm from Phoenix. I grew up in Mesa, Arizona. It's
cool.
It's a suburb east of Phoenix. It's a sprawling town, the Phoenix metropolitan area. So everything just merges into the next thing. So you could drive for an hour, and you go from Phoenix to Tempe to Mesa to Chandler to Gilbert.
Okay.
Anyways, so out of college, I got a job with a local entertainment magazine. So I was their lead photographer, meaning their only photographer. So I was doing all the cover shoots for this entertainment magazine, but it also had a news aspect. So I had a press badge. So I was going to sporting events and going to meet all these different interesting individuals to take a portrait of them for the stories they were writing about.
Right.
So it was a really fun job. It just didn't pay much.
Now, were these planned portraits or like candid portraits, like behind the scenes type portraits?
Kind of both. I prefer candid because of my journalism background.
Yeah.
I'm not super comfortable posing people.
Right.
And it's less natural.
It's a skill that I'm working on right now.
Yeah.
I remember, I'm sure you're aware of Frono's photo. He did the pictures for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, like in the kitchen when he's prepping to go on stage.
Those
and
are the best.
Like that. I love that.
Yeah. You catch the actual character of the person.
And so what happened with that then?
So I graduated December 2007 from Arizona State University with a degree in photojournalism and got a job right away. I was lucky because that's 2008, that economic downturn. Yeah. So I was lucky to get a job, and then it was a really fun job, and I had that job for 5 years. But the whole time the company was struggling because their revenue was based on advertising. Advertisers were dropping left and right, and they limped along as long as they could, and then I got laid off in 2011. Okay. Where I really had to. It's
kind of more time than you were you prepping to move to another step or
well, it was a push I needed to get into acupuncture. I'll say that.
Interesting. You didn't want to. You didn't want to pursue it further.
I knew that it was an intense field of study, and so I just didn't have the support I needed at the time from my ex-wife, and the timing and I wasn't fully convinced that I was going to do it because I knew if I was going to do it, I'd have to go all in, and I wasn't ready to go all in at that time in my life. So, I can backpedal a little bit farther.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So when I was 25, I got into martial arts. Which was what steered me toward the Eastern side of things. Because, how do you develop the martial art? You have to know anatomy, physiology, right? You have to know what the targets are on the human body and what the body's capable of, and what it's not. Mm-hmm. And so just through my training in martial arts, I gained this huge respect for the Eastern philosophy and view of the body and how things function. So I was doing some studying to see because I'm just kind of a
naturally
nerd and
curious.
To study things first. Yeah, I'm consciously curious. And so I went to a library to study different martial arts to see what would fit me the best. And I found a book on acupressure fighting, acupuncture point fighting, Dim Mak, Death Touch. Have you heard of this?
No.
So this is high level stuff of using the acupuncture systems as targets.
You could put people to sleep with different points.
Yeah, you hit someone here, here, and here, and they pass out. It's not like a direct blow to the head.
It sounds like something out of the movies, but it's real, huh?
It's real. So apparently, and I've read the science behind this. If you overload the brain, and acupressure and acupuncture points are very sensitive spots on the body where nerve endings and blood vessels intermingle, right? Yeah. If you overload the nervous system by striking them in a certain manner, it'll just shut down the system, right? Wow. It was way over my head at the time.
But that's fascinating. At that time, you're learning about it. You're like, what?
Right. And it was way over my head. And I'm like, I'm not a tough guy. I've never actually been in a fight, but I've done a lot of training.
But that's what's appealing about jiu-jitsu as well. Right. It's you don't have to be the biggest, strongest guy.
Right.
Which is, fun fact, that's how I met Ryan.
Yes. Jiu-jitsu class. And
Shout out Redsvik.
Shout out Redsvik. So where was I? Okay, so acupressure. I found a book on acupressure point healing for day-to-day ailments like headaches, stomach aches, things like that. So I started playing with that. I'm like, okay, this stuff actually works. I don't understand why. And no one ever in our society, no one ever talks about acupuncture or acupressure.
What made you believe that it works?
Well, I was seeing results on myself.
Oh.
Yeah, if I had a headache, I would hit the points that the book said to hit, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's working. I wake up with a stomach ache, or I eat something, or I have indigestion, I hit these points, I'm like, oh, wow, I feel better.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it was purely out of subjective self-experimentation.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And everything I had read was that acupuncture takes it to the next level.
Okay.
It's even more potent.
Yeah.
So immediately just super intrigued, mostly because I didn't know anything about it, right? And the United States as a whole didn't really know anything about it until the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't know how that came about?
Mm-mm.
So Nixon was in China. He was one of the first presidents ever to go to China, and one of his aides got really sick and had to go to the hospital while in China, and he received acupuncture the first time.
Oh, okay.
And then he came back and told everyone about it, and it was like, this is the future of medicine.
Interesting. And did it take off?
It didn't.
It didn't take off.
I mean, the system here in the U.S. It's there's too much money involved.
But
in
I feel like
medicine.
that's how it is. It's word of mouth. It's like you're complaining of something, and you're probably going to try everything under the sun, and then you hear a friend or a family member, someone in your social circle is like, you got to try acupuncture.
Right, yeah.
And then they'll take the leap.
One of the things that's kind of a pet peeve of mine is when people say, well, I don't believe in it, or I'm a big believer in acupuncture. It's not a belief system.
I was going to ask you that because there are videos out there that say that it won't work if they don't believe in it.
Well, I'm not sure which videos you're referring to.
Just practitioners, like acupuncture practitioners and acupuncturists. They say, like, they can tell if someone doesn't believe that it's going to work, like, they refuse to work on them.
See, I don't prescribe to that.
That's
I
cool.
don't believe that's true.
So it's more of an objective
thing.
Treatment for you.
In my experience, in my practice, I've been practicing for just over 4 years now. Even the people that come in and are right out skeptical.
Yeah.
I had a woman, she's like, I don't believe in this. I'm like, well, she was referred by the chiropractor that I was working with because they weren't getting anywhere. And I'm like, let's give you a free session just to introduce you to it, And she came off the table and she thought she was drugged because the needles have a physiological effect. Your brain releases endorphins in response to these foreign objects. So you will have a euphoric feeling. You might feel numbness. You might feel heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Some people feel high, right? If you're not used to that rush of chemicals from your own brain. Okay. And she thought I had drugged her. She's like, what did you put on those needles? I'm like, nothing. She's like, I don't believe in this. Why do I feel like this? I'm like, because it's not a belief system. It's a medicine. This has a physical effect on the body through the nervous system. Okay. We use the peripheral nervous system to affect the central nervous system.
Okay. I like the way you said that. Yeah.
So I've gotten more practiced at speaking about my medicine through Western terminology.
You got to break it down to them,
Yeah, you got to break it down. You got to put it in terms that people understand and recognize, or at least have some connection to. Because when we talk about chi and energy, it's too ethereal.
It's woo-woo for some people.
It feels too woo-woo. And I'm more science-based because I come from biology. I did a lot of chemistry, which actually helped me get through school a little bit faster because those are a lot of the core classes you have to take. Yeah. So, it's not something you have to believe in for it to work on you.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and even if you're skeptical, that's fine. Everybody should be skeptical of really anything that you're getting into that you're not familiar with, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to your podiatrist and he says like he can fix your plantar fasciitis by making you do some funny exercises, you're like, is that real science? Like, but it turns out it works.
Right.
Like, so
right.
It's good to be skeptical about just about anything. Like I always say, question everything. Like, where's the source coming from? What are their motivations?
But also do the deep work.
But do the deep work.
Don't just like with recent like cancel culture and whatnot. It's just like you see headlines and you're like, they're done, and it's like, you didn't do the work.
Yeah, no, right. That's huge right now.
And so. Is this like you're ready for it? You're applying to schools and things like that? Like what else did you bought into the system?
So I bought into the system. I started looking around the Phoenix area at different schools. At the time I was going through some other stuff with my ex-wife and didn't want to be in Phoenix anymore. Like I'd been there 32 years. I was tired of the heat. I needed a new scene. And my now wife, thankfully, just was...
Shout out Hannah.
Shout out to Hannah. She's the adventurous type. She's like, well, I want to go live in Chicago, and I'd love to have you come with me. Oh. And so I started looking at the schools here and realized that Pacific College of Oriental Medicine was ranked number 2 in the nation for this medicine at the time.
Wow.
I'm like, this is just all lining up perfectly.
The one in downtown, right?
One downtown.
What's the other one? Out west, Lombard area.
There's Midwest College.
Not that one.
I always forget them. I'm sorry.
I forget. My buddy's dad teaches there. It'll come to us eventually.
It'll hit. Yeah.
So did you get a tour? You went downtown, or you made the move to Chicago?
I hadn't moved yet.
Okay.
So if we back up again, I got laid off the photography job.
Okay.
Right. They limped along as long as they could. 2011, get laid off. Like, what am I going to do with myself? I was subsisting by doing freelance photography, and sleeping on my buddy's couch.
Hey, those are the days, though. You know?
It was. I thought I was at rock bottom, and then I broke my ankle at that time.
Oh, no way.
And then it was...
Because I'm sure were you still practicing martial arts at the time? And
physical activity was the only, like...
Yeah. Just
stress relief I had. And I break my ankle, and it was, like, just the bottom of the barrel for me.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So then, from there, my brother owns this construction company doing highway construction, so I go to work for him for a year just to get back on my feet and try to figure out what I'm going to do next.
Right.
And it was a blessing in disguise, because with highway construction, you're out in the middle of nowhere wearing headphones to protect yourself from all the heavy machinery noise.
Okay.
So you can't listen to music, you're not having any conversations, so you're just out there with your own thoughts.
Wow.
And that made me really prioritize. Like, I got to get my butt to Chicago and start that school.
The money was good, though, was it? Was it good in construction?
Yes. It paid better than my photography job, but I hated it.
That's interesting. So one of my previous guests, good buddy of mine, originally a paramedic. He's still a paramedic, but he's in one of the largest unions, Local 150, and they operate heavy machinery. And
yes.
And he has these thoughts as well. It's just like he makes stupid amount of money, but he's like, what am I doing with my life?
It wasn't fulfilling to me, right?
Right.
I'm more of an intellectual. I like learning, and I wasn't learning anything out there other than like how not to eat for 12 hours a day. Because they were always saying, like, if you eat, you have to use the bathroom, and that cuts into your work. So we wouldn't eat all day, and then we'd have like a big dinner. And crash out.
Intermittent fasting in a way.
Yes, forced intermittent fasting, and So, but I've had a lot of strange experiences that led me down this path. But I can honestly say I've never been happier in my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then after that, you existential crisis, and you're like, I got to make the move.
So this is where the support system comes in.
Okay.
Hannah was on board with me going back to school. She knew that was my passion, and she knew that was just the next step that needed to happen for me and for us.
Yeah.
Right. So she stepped up and basically carried me for the whole time I was in school.
Oh, wow.
I worked really part-time while I was in school just to cover a couple small...
It's not cheap.
No.
It's not cheap.
No. Just to cover small basic bills like my cell phone and whatever cable that I could cover while she carried our rent and other major bills.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I meant with you need the support, because it's such an intense schooling that it was 4 years full-time for your master's degree, whereas standardly a master's degree is 2 years, right, after you get your bachelor's. And most intense schooling I've ever had. Like, as a photojournalist, I didn't have to...
It's interesting to hear that. I obviously didn't make it far. I got through to the interview process.
Yeah.
But it was so laissez-faire. It was just like, how's it going? Who are you as a person? You're pretty much in the school. Gave me a quick tour, and it's just like, it made me question like the validity of it. It's just like, can anyone do this? Like, do I just pay you money, and I'm like...
well, that's kind of the problem. It's a private school,
yeah,
right? And it's funded by people coming in and getting student loans, or having some sort of benefactor that's paying for their schooling.
Right.
But they need that revenue. So my experience, I was really nervous going to do my interview, because I'm like, I hope I get in, and then when I get in there, I looked
you want
around,
to take it
like,
seriously.
I'm like, they're just taking anybody that looks their way. Sorry, PCOM.
No, I
got a great education.
Yeah, but like, look where he is now.
But not everybody's going to make it, because it depends on your drive and your goals, really. Like, some people don't want to work that hard. I feel like sometimes this field attracts the more woo side, which is awesome. We need that side. We need those more ethereal people. I'm more science-based, like I said, so I didn't really get into that aspect of the medicine.
Choose.
Yeah, and so I've got people I know from school that maybe didn't make it all the way through the program, or they did all this hard work, got their degree, and then they're not doing anything with it.
Oh, wow.
And it hurts me because I was like, I want this medicine to succeed. I want it to be represented well. I want it to be everywhere because I think it would be beneficial to everybody.
Yeah.
Right. So if people aren't, I can't even say that they're not even good stewards for the medicine, because there is an ethereal aspect to this medicine that just isn't well received here in the U.S. Right.
It just leaves a bad taste for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think it's people fear what they don't know.
Exactly.
Right. So if we have more people that can break it down into terms that we can understand,
right,
I think it'll be better received.
So getting into acupuncture, knowing that was its perception,
the current climate, yeah,
right, that it was perceived that way from the general populace here in the U.S.
Right.
It made me open myself up to more ethereal aspects of these things, just because. So here in the U.S. and in the Western science medicine world, like. I'm losing my train of thought all of a sudden.
Like pharmaceutical or like?
No, just the scientific method, right?
Okay. Can you repeat it?
Is the standard,
yeah.
Right? And so acupuncture didn't hold up well to that testing because...
It's hard to measure. Like, you just measure subjective findings. Like,
well, that's the thing. They were trying to... It was more like they were trying to disprove acupuncture by saying it's placebo, when there isn't a good placebo... Like, you can't do a fake needle.
Yeah. But would patients know if you're poking the wrong spots? Like spots that don't do anything?
Well, no. Well, I mean, even if
to be the placebo?
No.
Okay.
They wouldn't.
They wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
But I wonder what else could be the placebo? Because it's not a special. Is it a special needle? Like, there's nothing on the needle, right?
No, there's nothing on the needle. But they created these needles that don't penetrate. It just hits your skin, but doesn't penetrate.
Okay.
But that's still going to have a physiological effect because your skin is your largest organ on your body.
Yeah.
Packed with nerve and blood, right? So if you were to just a blow on the back of your hand, that's going to cause an effect in the brain, right? So they had all these studies and like, oh, it's just placebo. But what they didn't say is that even using the fake needles, they were getting better results from the treatments than using Western medicine.
Oh.
Protocols. And
for some, is like, that's all you need.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I can't name any specific studies off the top of my head, sorry.
No, it's all good.
But there's so much science out there. And most of it's coming out of Europe and Asia, the best science around acupuncture. But that's all moot in my opinion, because I know that subjective experiences.
It's like, what more do you need than seeing your patients walk away?
Right.
With improvements.
Yeah, I had a patient this week. He's been having really bad knee problems, and he came in. He usually wears a knee brace, and he's one of the skeptical ones. He's like, I don't know, this doesn't seem like it's working. And I'm like, where's your knee brace today? He's like, oh, am I not wearing it? Like, he forgot it today. He just walked in, it's fine. He's like, oh, and I had the best golf game my entire life.
Golf, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's great for athletes, especially because it increases your focus and your mental clarity, and it's, I don't know, it's... All the effects are pretty impressive.
You're talking about not golf, but acupuncture.
Yes, acupuncture.
Improves clarity and all that.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
Interesting.
Right. So
interesting.
So I've had athletes as patients that reported them having increased performance from acupuncture. Even though that's not our goal, it's one of the happy side effects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so can you walk us quickly through like the 4 years? Like, what were your highs and any lows, if you had any lows?
Oh, man. That first year just about killed me.
Like, to the point where you wanted to quit? Like, you questioned yourself?
I didn't question. I knew that's what I was going to do, and I was committed to it, but like I was burnt out after that first year, and I started saying like C's get degrees, because I was an A student from like kindergarten through college, like, and then all of a sudden this
was some of the hardest things you did.
Yeah, like I mean the herbal aspect. I had a real hard time with herbs. I don't have a good relationship with plants, except the plants I have out here on the patio. But like I had to learn Latin and the Chinese names of every single herb in the medical realm that we use, and there was spelling tests on the Latin, and it's just rote memorization.
Yeah,
which I've never had to do as a photojournalist. You don't memorize anything. Like, you don't really study anything other than like
composition and just like getting the story and
and maybe some like libel or libel law and things like
Okay.
that. You have to know some of the law around journalism, but I've never had to memorize stuff the way you had to memorize this.
Okay.
Point locations, anatomy, all the bones.
And when you were doing it, did you feel like this is practical knowledge that you need to know this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Especially the anatomy,
So
physiology.
you never felt like you were wasting your time?
No, never.
Okay.
No. It was just so much.
That one, it's such a fire drinking from a fire hydrant.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
You are cramming and regurgitating, and then you forget 90% of it because it's just so much information.
Right.
So, in our school system, not necessarily just PCOM Chicago, but their main campus is in San Diego, and there was one in New York. They do annual comps, so comprehensive exams that other schools don't do, and it's supposed to just test your retention
As a student, or as a practitioner
as
now?
a student.
Oh, okay.
Right. So at the end of the first year, you do all your finals for the term, and then you have this gigantic comprehensive exam
Okay.
for the whole year,
Wow.
and it's super intense. So you're
Sounds like boards or something.
yeah,
in a way,
I
Or
guess it's kind of preparing you for your
the
board
USMLE.
exams.
Yeah.
And that's the idea because our school has a really great track record for passing your board exams.
Gotcha.
So it was good practice, but it was also just studying nonstop. I would do study sessions through the night where I would read as much as I could till my eyes would shut. I'd sleep a half hour, set an alarm, wake up, and then do it again, and just do that all night until I had to get up and go to school again. And that was a regular thing for almost 4 years.
Oh my God. What was your favorite part about the program?
My favorite part, the camaraderie.
Okay.
Because it's such a tough thing and you're with like-minded individuals, you become this little family. So
Yeah.
you go in, and they call you your group, your cohort,
Yeah.
right? So when you first get in there, you're fresh, and you have to introduce yourself and get to know everybody.
Yeah.
And it's sort of this weird feeling out process, and they throw you in right away. So like I don't remember if it was day 1 or day 2, you're in palpation lab where you're taking your clothes off and touching each other to try to find like anatomical structures. You have to learn how to, that's how you find your acupuncture points. Like, okay, so if I find this bone in your elbow, in reference to that, there's an acupuncture point here, 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 and here, and how to measure those out. So all over the body. So you had to get comfortable disrobing.
That's a great way of doing it.
In front of these
Peers.
strangers.
Yeah.
And you get used to touching bodies and seeing bodies, and
Yeah.
they throw you in right away, and you get pretty close to this struggle.
I have a feeling that every cohort is going to have a very diverse background. Is that true?
Absolutely.
People making career changes, or people?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So acupuncture, I think the average age that people come to acupuncture is in their early 30s.
Okay.
Which was true for me. I was
Yeah.
32 when I started the program. But you had people there. I think the youngest one was a friend of mine, Madeline, who we called Doogie Hauser because she was like,
from an early age?
she was like 20. She was like the youngest person ever to register there and to graduate as a doctor through the program.
Wow.
So we called her Doogie Hauser. But we have people in their 60s in my cohort as well.
Yeah.
So and everywhere in between, different education levels, different ethnicities, different backgrounds, like just anybody and everybody that's interested in it can take a stab at it. Yeah, pun not intended.
And during the tour, they said that you can have, lab time and practice time, and you need to work on patients and things like that. And it made it seem like it was kind of an entrepreneurial thing because you would make your own cards and whatnot. And also, I saw everyone's cards hanging next to the receptionist desk, and I don't know, that part of that did appeal to me. I've always been a fan of opening up my own shop, whatever that may look like. But during school, did they lay out your options? And I love hearing how it's more integrated into hospital systems these days.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not just like you need your own clinic or anything, like your own outpatient clinic. You can you can be part of the Western medicine system if you were interested in that.
Right.
So did they do a good job of laying out your options after school?
They did, and that was toward the end of the program. When you're getting ready to graduate, you take a practice management course. So it teaches you how to put a business plan together.
Nice.
What's the budget you're going to need to be up and running? What you can expect for income if you're seeing so many patients a day at whatever rate.
Right.
So you can sort of figure out like what size of space you need to
Yeah.
keep afloat,
Right.
to pay your rent and then make some money. But there's different ways to be an acupuncturist. You can start your own business, which is hard because you got
Money.
You usually have to get a business loan, right? You need some capital to get that thing up and running. You can rent a space, so you're paying someone to use their existing space. You bring in patients, and you are paying the clinic a portion of the money you're bringing in.
Yeah. Is that the most common?
That's one of the most common.
Because that works the same way with hairstylists, salon owners. It's like they have free space that they can rent out.
And then you don't have all this overhead, which is kind of nice, but you also don't have insurance. You don't have really anything covered, no benefits whatsoever.
But what is the cost of malpractice for an acupuncturist? Because I talked to a chiropractor. He said it's very low in comparison to like an anesthesiologist.
Yes, exactly. It's super safe.
Okay.
I mean, there are some risk factors. You're sticking needles in the body, but if you're educated and you've done the work, you know how to do it safely. So, and really, anything to do with the needles is not why acupuncturists get sued. It's usually from people getting burned by either heat lamps or moxibustion. Moxibustion is a technique where we burn an herb on the body or near the body. And burns are the number one reason acupuncturists get
interesting.
Sued. It's nothing to do with the needles. Yeah, that is interesting. So the malpractice insurance is very cheap compared to a Western medicine practitioner. Right?
Okay.
So I don't remember what it is offhand because right now my job is covering it, but
that's cool.
It's pretty affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah, for like a $1 million, $3 million policy.
Yeah. And these days, how easy is it for a patient to have their insurance cover acupuncture or oriental medicine?
It's getting more and more, which is exciting. But
I'm sure that was a barrier, before.
For a long time.
Just like paying out of pocket and stuff like that.
So more and more acupuncture is being, included in insurance plans.
Okay.
But it's always based on the individual group, whether or not that's covered. So say like Blue Cross Blue Shield, acupuncture is covered through Blue Cross Blue Shield, but your specific plan doesn't cover it because your group voted that that's not covered. So we run into that a lot.
I didn't even know that like niche. Or
it is. Okay. It's really frustrating. It really, it's really prohibitive to the number of people that you can see as an acupuncturist.
Should use acupuncture,
right.
Yeah.
And they either have crazy deductibles or you're only approved for like very specific conditions that have a lot of good science behind it, or at least the most science behind it.
That they can utilize acupuncture for?
Right. So everybody knows that acupuncture is good for pain. So usually you're covered for like low back pain or if you have nausea.
Yeah.
Right? So,
which is great because that's kind of all encompassing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they got nausea.
Right. So I mean, and I've seen people all kinds of conditions, and if they have that policy, then they're paying out of pocket.
Yeah.
So the cost becomes prohibitive because you're talking out of pocket costs of like in Chicago anywhere from $65 to
per session,
$100 a session.
Yikes!
And that can get real pricey real fast if you're coming once a week.
Yeah.
Which is typically medically necessary.
Right.
Through acupuncture because
it's not a cure all.
No, it's not a one and done. It's a process.
Yeah.
It's a cumulative effect in the body. So the more acupuncture you get, the more potent it becomes. Your nervous system fires up to the process and becomes more potent as you get treated during these sessions.
Okay.
So don't expect acupuncture to treat you in one shot.
Yeah. But that goes for any medicine.
Although I've had those patients, which is always surprising. I call them my golden children.
But those aren't expectations.
Yes.
They shouldn't be expectations.
Right. Okay. Right. And that's the other thing. We have as a industry, we have sort of a PR problem where we need to get our message out there and educate people. So I appreciate this time on your podcast because people don't know about this medicine and they don't know enough about this medicine, and I get people all the time saying, I wish I would have done this a lot sooner. People come to me a lot, or had in the past, out of desperation. They're like, I've tried everything else. Can you help me? I'm like, yeah. I don't guarantee.
Of course.
But, I mean.
But they see results, they're like, wow, what?
But even if we don't fix, like, their chief complaint, like, especially if it's super chronic, like, well, it'll improve. Yeah. It's not going to go away. But you're getting all these other benefits that are making you healthier overall. So they're like sleeping better, they're less stressed out, right? So they're getting all these other ancillary benefits that they weren't expecting to happen. Right. And I've done a lot of fertility stuff, like, and that was just the nature of the clinic I came from.
From infertile, like for people that were infertile?
Yeah.
Really?
Help people get pregnant.
Because I saw your post on labor.
Yes.
Inducing labor.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't, like, there are a lot of, not necessarily ailments or issues, but like just like what people are going through. Like you wouldn't, because you earlier you said that acupuncture is typically used for pain.
Right.
But like
that's what it's known for.
There's
right?
so much more.
There's every aspect. So human beings are physical, spiritual, right, beings, right?
Yeah.
So we can and mental beings, right? We have the most powerful machine in
That's what makes
the known
us human.
Universe, right?
Yes, yeah.
We can affect all that through the nervous system, right? I like to say that it's a holistic medicine because we can affect the whole person. But through the system, we look at the different organs processing different emotions. So your emotional state can affect those organs as well, negatively. So if you're super stressed out, that's going to have a hard time on your liver, which processes stress in the Chinese system. And so through the diagnostics that you learn through this intense schooling, you're able to see what organs are involved through, like, I do this with my sister-in-law a lot. She'll say, hey, I've got this going on, can you help me? And then I'll send her my questionnaire. It's 30 questions. She sends it back, and then I have a diagnosis based off that and a picture of her tongue. She'll send me a cell phone snap of her tongue.
Oh. And is that something from school, like the 30 questions, or is that something you developed over time? I
guess that's kind of what I've narrowed my diagnostic questions down to over time.
Interesting.
But they're all sort of the same questions you would have to learn to get a full diagnosis through this system.
That's one thing that did appeal to me, is how much time you spend with the patient before you put any hands or needles into the patient.
Yeah.
It's very comprehensive. Whereas like the Western medicine, they have to reach a quota for some reason, they have a certain number of patients, and so they don't have as much time to spend, even if they want to, with their patients.
And that's why I say we're the feel-good doctors, because we will sit there and listen to you, because every little piece that you give us, even the stuff that people think sounds crazy.
Letting weight go,
It's not even that. It's partly that. The talk therapy is part of what I do too.
Okay.
I'm not a therapist. I'm not licensed as a therapist.
Right.
But I mean, just letting people have a platform to get the stuff off their chest is therapeutic, right? Having a listening ear. But where was I going with that? I'm going to come back to it. But the questioning, right? So
the 30 questions.
The 30 questions. Oh shoot, I had a point, and I lost it.
No, it's okay.
We'll come back to it. It'll crop up. Okay.
Well, just like how much time you get to spend with
right,
patients.
Yes. So yes, thank you. The time spent with patients, because it is we're getting to know the patient, and they'll tell us things all the time like, this sounds crazy, because my other doctors say it's all in my head, but I'm experiencing this. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a common.
So that's nice to hear.
Symptom.
Something that's another practitioner has like shrugged off. You kind of acknowledge
all the time,
it,
and that's why people are coming to us saying like, oh, I've tried everything else. I can't find any relief for this. I've tried this medicine. I've tried this therapy. I've tried this, and nobody has an answer for me. I'm like, oh, it's your spleen and your liver are out of balance, and we need to fix that. And I've seen some really crazy cases along those lines.
Do you prescribe things that they should change in their day to day in addition to what you do in the clinic setting?
That's a huge part.
Okay.
So we give them dietary recommendations. We give them Chinese medicinal herb recommendations, exercise recommendations, sleep, like get a meditation app, like whatever it is that they need that's going to help balance their internal system. We'll sort of guide them.
Okay.
Yeah. So mind, body, spirit, we're trying to align all of that.
Right. Yeah. So what are some other complaints that you've, like, things like blood pressure it kind of makes sense through like the stress part, but like it was hard to connect the dots, and I'm sure maybe a lot of people relate to that. It's just like, how does acupuncture fix blood pressure and other like ambiguous complaints, like, or not like ailments like that?
Sure. Well, I mean, we're talking, fight or flight.
Okay.
Right?
Sympathetic nervous response.
Right. Sympathetic response. Right. So acupuncture taps into the parasympathetic nervous system
Okay.
and tries to ramp that up while suppressing the sympathetic nervous system. So we're putting you from fight or flight into rest and digest.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of it. Your blood vessels are muscular.
Yeah,
right?
they
so
can
they contract
dilate,
and they
constrict,
right.
yeah.
And that's due to your sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system controlling that.
Okay.
So if we can
If you can dilate the vessels.
dilate the vessels, which is relaxing the sympathetic
And so what the
activating
act
parasympathetic.
of acupuncture, it releases endorphins, and that induces parasympathetic nervous system, kind
yeah,
of like that?
yeah,
Oh,
essentially,
okay.
yeah. So you have efferent
And
and
afferent,
afferent
yeah.
nerve conduction. It's going to and from the body, sorry.
Yeah.
And so like if you hit your elbow and you rub it real quick,
Oh, yeah.
it feels better.
Yeah. Yes.
The afferent, am I getting these backwards? Efferent.
Afferents to the brain.
Afferents to the brain. So the afferent conduction,
It feels you rubbing it,
how am I?
and then it releases.
Your pain receptor is slower than your pleasure receptor.
Hmm.
And they've measured this through nerve.
Is it because does it not make it all the way up to the brain and makes it to your spine?
It goes to the spine.
Yeah,
So you have
okay.
these reflexes at the spinal level
Mm.
that I guess they sort of overpower the pain signal. And that's kind of what acupuncture's tapping into, at least for pain. But for anything else, it's just all nervous system, man.
Okay. And what other ailments are there that you've been able to manage and help subside and improve?
How graphic can we get?
Dude, come on. I'm a paramedic. We're fine. I think
Yeah,
the
okay.
listeners will
All
have
right, cool. So one of my favorite ones, this guy he owns a business where he has to go to Mexico several times a year, and he gets food poisoning down there every time. He's drinking the water
Still?
or something. Yeah.
Wow.
So he's on antibiotics constantly. And antibiotics from a Chinese perspective are energetically cold. So if you think of energetics, like functionality is warm
Okay.
and the lack of functionality is cold.
Okay.
Right? So if you're on antibiotics, it's inhibiting your functionality, especially if you're on them for a long time.
Yeah.
So the poor guy, he's had like chronic bloody diarrhea for years.
Because the good bacteria is not able to do
Right.
its job.
So that's a big part of it. So he came out of desperation. He's like, I don't know. He's actually seeing our nutritional therapist first, but he couldn't keep any of the medications in because they would just go through his body, right? So I'm like, all right, well, let's stop up your diarrhea first, and then we're going to build you up. And we did that with moxa. Moxibustion is the burning of an herb called mugwort. Sounds like something out of Harry Potter.
Right? I was just thinking that.
But the scientific name is an Artemisia plant, right? So it's an Artemisia. It's highly processed, but the reason we use it is it burns very steadily, very safely. It doesn't ash, right? It's really safe to manipulate.
Okay.
So it emits a far infrared signature that your body feels as heat, but that far infrared light penetrates the body and is absorbed by the body and can be used to boost your ATP production, which is the power cell that's coming out of
energy.
mitochondria, right?
Yeah.
So it increases blood flow, it increases the turnover rate of cellular reproduction. So it's
So do you target specific areas? Is it localized, or where do you
yeah.
end up? Okay.
So we target very specific acupuncture points
Yeah.
to boost all those things.
Okay.
And I think after 2 treatments, he had stopped having blood in his stools, and then after
So he didn't cut his antibiotics?
he didn't at first. So usually because I'm not allowed to tell people to stop taking their medications.
Interesting.
That's outside my scope. But once they start seeing improvement from what I'm doing, they can talk to their doctor and say, hey, can I reduce these things? Which is another case I was telling, I think we texted about, I was talking about you, I think about, I have a patient who went from 6 muscle relaxants
Well,
a day to 3,
yeah.
and he's on his way to 2.
Well, you were telling me about someone that the pain came back because he couldn't see you guys during quarantine.
Right.
I remember that one.
Yeah, and that's the guy. So he gained a bunch of weight because he's immobile basically because he's in so much pain. He's on 6 muscle relaxants a day to manage it, and I've seen him twice now, and he's back down to 3 muscle relaxants a day, and we're still trying to reduce that. But
Wow.
Yeah, it has a profound effect on people's lives.
And these days, it's not as much with the you had a post about moxibustion, about using it in like a gun form, like a right. It wasn't traditionally like you weren't burning anything. You were just like
Right.
like a laser gun. Like
yes, exactly. Yeah, so that's the new science now.
Oh.
I was lucky enough to be hired by an organization that, well, one, they don't let us burn anything. They don't like fire indoors, so they had to find a good replacement for that. And my colleague,
I look at that and I see it as like Western medicine acknowledging the efficacy of moxibustion, of like Oriental medicine.
yes, so they just took it to the next step and used technology to duplicate it. So they're using what's called a cold laser. They're calling it photobiomodulation, PBM. That's an interesting new term. Low-level laser light therapy is the older term. But it's the same thing. They're working with the infrared spectrum.
Yeah.
But this is the near infrared, where it doesn't emit heat.
Okay.
So far infrared emits heat.
So
Near infrared does not.
It's not as effective as the traditional.
It's actually more effective.
It's more effective
because we're mostly water. The heat vibrates the water molecules in your cells, and that disrupts your cells' ability to absorb that light energy. So the cold laser is more effective.
Oh, interesting.
So technology for the win, but it's still an ancient technology that they have just improved upon.
Yeah.
So we're getting some really cool stuff.
What other modalities do you practice? Do you practice any other parts of Oriental medicine?
Cupping therapy.
Cupping, okay.
We do.
I remember like several Olympics ago when
yeah.
Michael Phelps, and they're like,
Phelps.
does that work? Like,
yeah, absolutely, that works. Like, and what's really fascinating is that cupping developed all around the world around the same time historically in different cultures, independent of one another.
Without talking to each other?
Yeah.
Oh.
Ancient alien theory. I don't know. Well, but yeah. So it's pretty cool. So like in ancient China, they were using hollow pieces of bamboo.
Okay.
Light a fire in there. It absorbs or it consumes the oxygen and creates a vacuum. You stick it on the body, and it makes a suction. And so cupping is a suction therapy.
Okay.
I like to describe it as the reverse of massage. So instead of pushing on the body to like move lactic acid out of the muscles, we're pulling on the body.
Yeah.
So that suction pulls your skin and your muscle away from the underlying connective tissues. It pulls extra blood into the tissues to help soften muscle knots and adhesions. It's great for fixing up scar tissue. You can do it gently on the face for fine lines and wrinkles. Because it increases blood flow. You're improving collagen production.
Is it better than massage therapy or complementary to massage therapy? Do they both have their?
They both have their place. Yeah.
Okay.
I worked alongside a lot of massage therapists,
right? Because that's something that PCOM offered as well.
Yes. Yeah. So I just went through the acupuncture program. I have friends and colleagues that went through massage and then acupuncture, which actually I think gave them a leg up because they had a lot more time with hands-on bodies, right? So when it came to feeling the acupuncture channels and finding the points, they were a lot more comfortable than like a newbie coming in just learning it for the first time, right?
Right.
But we also learned a little bit of body therapy too.
Okay.
It's basically a Chinese heavy-handed massage called Tui Na. Excuse me. So I use that sometimes as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any what would in the next maybe short-term and long-term vision of the profession, what would you like to see? What would you like if there were any changes you'd like to bring? Like, do you at all clash with the other practitioners within your space at all?
So far, no. I mean, because we're such a new therapy where I'm working now, they didn't have space for us. And even though we're under a specific department, they moved us to a completely separate area just because they didn't have...
So you don't even have the opportunity to converse, right? What if there was like a shared space to collab and just like throw ideas around?
Well, what's great is I had an anesthesiologist who had developed a stiff neck.
Wait, that came for work?
Yeah.
That saw you for work?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it was great. So he'd never had acupuncture before. He was working over a patient during a surgery, and he got this really bad kink in his neck, and they wanted to send him home because he was in so much pain from the stiff neck.
That much pain.
They're like, well, send him up to acupuncture so if that can help. And before he left the table, he was like, I'm already feeling better. Are you sure that you're not drugging me? Everyone always thinks I'm drugging him. Like, what's on these needles? Nothing.
Oh, wow.
So that's... that's kind of what's exciting, is that I get to show it off a little bit to these other Western medical professionals.
You just got to find the right person that'll just, after they experience it, shout it from the rooftops, and it's going to spread like wildfire.
Well, I might get an opportunity to help out with a surgery coming up for,
Very cool.
for a patient that's allergic to anesthesia.
So they can't be put under.
Right.
Okay.
So it's really popular in China that are doing open heart surgeries. You can find this on YouTube.
Yeah.
Where the people's
They're awake.
Might get a little local anesthetic.
Right.
But it's the acupuncture that is blocking the pain signal. So they're wide awake. They're feeding them oranges while their chest is cracked. You can find this they're on YouTube. It's insane. And like, that's why I'm in this. This is what I'm doing it for. Because if you're not using those drugs, it's safer for the patient. It's cheaper for the patient, right?
Oh yeah.
It's just more effective. Recovery's quicker. Yeah.
That's the future.
You would hope this intermingling of both systems is, in my opinion, the way to go. But I am an acupuncturist, so you know.
Yeah, it's just like, is there any part of your day that maybe is a little frustrating? Like, do you feel limited in some capacity, and things that like people above you need to put in place, like in the future, that will allow you to do certain things? Like, do you ever feel like, damn, I wish like I could do this, but I just can't because the proper channels won't let me?
Yes, absolutely, yes. So,
okay.
I'll walk around and I see these different departments, and I'm just like, acupuncture fits in every department, right? So if you have a maternity ward, right? I've done a lot of fertility stuff and things.
I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, there's a pulmonary function lab.
Oh wow!
And acupuncture is great for helping increase lung function. If you're an asthmatic or if you have a cold.
I heard asthma was on there as well.
Any department we can help. And that's what the frustrating part is. We get referrals from all these other departments, and it's always for low back pain. That's all they think it's for.
If you were to explain the asthma part, because you know, as a paramedic, as an EMT, you're allowed to give bronchodilators. Is that the same way? It's like you're activating the parasympathetic response, and
exactly.
It dilates the bronchioles, the smooth muscle around the bronchioles. Okay.
And this is, you got to remember, this is a system that was developed 5,000 years ago.
Right.
Continuously being refined.
Right.
During that time, it's all experimentation. It's all trial and error for thousands of years to find out what really works.
Mm-hmm.
The Chinese are notorious for keeping things that work, right? And this thing's been around again for 5,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
They're really good at melding new with old, and never like throwing out the old with the new, for the new. And especially, I mean, it really came around with the modern form of TCM is what it's called, traditional Chinese medicine. We're trying to change that to traditional East Asian medicine, because you now have Korean acupuncture, Japanese acupuncture.
Slightly different?
Yeah, there's different techniques, and which is why when I was saying that when you're doing experiments and you don't have like a good placebo needle, it's because that if it just touches your skin, it has an effect. That's the Japanese acupuncture system.
Oh.
They don't penetrate. They just sort of tap your skin with the needles.
Oh,
and they get great results.
Okay.
So it's sort of along those lines.
So hard to study then, you know.
Yeah, so those are different specialties that you can train in while you're at PCOM. But I jived with the straight old school Chinese medicine.
It's interesting. In my class, I always teach the students to always ask the why. And it's so, I mean, you are definitely doing a great job at breaking down like the why, but it's there's still like, you gotta just like take it for what it is.
Some of it you just some of it you do, and you can find your why later, just to get through. Sometimes, like they said that a lot in school, fake it till you make it, right?
Oh man.
But not faking like you know where your acupuncture points are or how to manipulate the needle, but more like
but like if you were an early practitioner and you had patients that like, how does this work? Like,
right, and nobody wants to hear like, I just graduated last week, let me put some needles in you. So but at that point you've been in school for 4 years, and the last year you were an intern actually actively treating patients, so you can say, I've been treating patients for the past year. And that's the thing, like the first 2 years you don't touch anybody with a needle. You do all the other stuff first. You learn how to cup, you learn how to do the tuina, you learn how to do the moxa safely, right? because the needles is the I guess the dangerous part.
The most invasive,
The most
and it's not even that invasive.
Right, right. Which brings me to another thing. We have this big ongoing headbutt competition with PTs because they do dry needling.
Yes.
You've heard of dry needling?
Yes. I know a chiropractor that does it, actually, I think.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, okay.
Tell me. So they claim that they do what you do? Or it's just as effective? Or what's the headline?
They're claiming it's not acupuncture because they're not using our channel theory, but they're putting needles in the body. They are acupuncture needles. Although they started selling them, calling them dry needles so that they don't get them confused.
But it's still acupuncture.
But it's still acupuncture. Because it doesn't have to be at an acupuncture point for it to work. We have points that are off channels that we call Ashur points. Ashur just translates to ouch point.
Okay.
So like if you have pain here and that's not an acupuncture point, we'll put a needle in it to increase blood flow to it to fix it, right?
Okay.
But also dry needling focuses on just trigger points in the body.
Okay.
We call that motor point therapy in Chinese medicine.
Okay.
So it's the same thing, but they get maybe a weekend course.
Why? Maybe
100 hours.
A certificate, right? Yeah.
Right. And I've spent thousands of hours learning these techniques and how to do it properly and how to manipulate we have clean needle technique classes that we have to get certified in to show that we're not contaminating the needle before we put in they don't have to do any of that stuff.
Right.
Because their scope of practice is a bit broader than ours as a Western medicine practitioner.
Okay.
In a Western field.
And so what's the clash? Do you not want them to practice, or?
Well, the problem is when someone with that little training has an accident and say puncture someone's lung.
Wow.
It's still when they whoever tracks these things tracks injuries by acupuncture, that gets lumped in.
Yeah.
Okay. Right?
Okay.
Because it was an acupuncture.
Even if they call it dry needling.
Even if they call it dry, because it's an acupuncture needle. So it gets a little muddy. So there's it's a sore subject. Like when I first interviewed at the job I got now, and they introduced me to the PTs, they like rolled their eyes at me like, "Oh, great, another acupuncturist." And I thought I'm like, "Oh,
wouldn't you think like teach me?"
You would hope. I know. I'm like, so, and that's the thing. Like, so I was talking to one of these PTs recently, and he's like, "Yeah, I have a history of like heartburn, and so I went to an acupuncturist and just sort of paid attention to what he's doing. So now I just do it to myself instead of going to that acupuncturist to get treated anymore," which wasn't always the best way to do things, in my opinion. But
and PTs themselves like have the room to, and chiropractors can just like pick up different certificates and be as woo-woo as you want to be and things like that.
And in fact, like there's a mode of Chinese medicine adjustments of the bones that way outdates chiropractic. But it's just not in our scope because chiropractic owns that here in the Western
That's
medicine.
so crazy.
I know.
Owns it. No one owns anything. It's just knowledge, you know?
So it's just scope of practice, and it's very limited as an acupuncturist. And that goes from state to state. So if you're in New Jersey, California, I forget which other state, Florida.
But what about osteopathic medicine? You know, the DOs. They learn how to, don't they do kind of minor adjustments as well?
Yeah,
right.
Well, what I was getting at is that in those states that I just mentioned, you're a primary care physician as an acupuncturist.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait, it can be? They can be?
Yeah,
they can be you are an acupuncturist.
If in California, when you get your acupuncture license, you are considered a primary care physician.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Just it's different from state to state. So Illinois does not, and actually most states do not.
So you need a referral. Or like depending on the insurance, like your patients are referred to you.
In the setting I'm in now, yes. But when I was at a different clinic, it was just people off the street could come in, and if their insurance jived or they wanted to pay out of pocket. So it's kind of a messy system.
Yeah.
Yeah, healthcare in America.
But I have a feeling it feels like it's being more accepted these days, which is great to hear.
Yes, which is I feel super lucky to be where I'm at this time. The timing of me coming out of school and getting a job, I feel was great because
that's awesome.
It's more and more accepted by insurance and just by people in general, and it's still on its way up as far as...
There was a time where I wanted to be a PA, and now it's super saturated. A lot of my EMT students make up that demographic of wanting to go to PA school, and
I see.
It's harder than ever to get in.
Yeah.
And they're still facing their own issues of like, are they doctors or not doctors? It's like...
Right.
It's
everyone has every like profession has their own thing.
And that was a big thing for me too. Like, so I finished my master's. That was a 4-year program, and then I really didn't want to go back to school, but I feel like we should have been doctors coming out of that 4-year program. 'Cause it's a lot more schooling than the chiropractors get, and they're doctors, right?
Yeah.
So I had to do an extra 1.5 years to get my doctorate.
Okay.
Which was it was an online program. It was very research focused, and we're getting rain now. Hopefully,
I think we'll be good.
Okay.
Cool.
But so almost 6 years total of schooling to get me to where I'm at now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's, I mean, that
Postgraduate.
just hearing that, I mean, I know there's like different quality of education, but that's a lot of schooling.
It's a lot of schooling, yeah. And I feel good about the schooling I got. I feel like, and actually I was just having this discussion with someone recently who's looking at maybe getting into a new profession, and she's like, well, do you think I should go for it? I'm like, just do it. I'm like, when I look back now, as hard as the schooling was, it feels insignificant to what the rest of my career is going to be.
What you've been accomplishing.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the 4-6 years is going to pale in comparison to the next 30-40 years of my life.
And to add extra validity, you're going to be okay with that?
Oh, I'm fine.
Okay, I'm good too.
This is okay. We're not going to get shocked. It's raining now.
Do they require? Is it the governing body? Do they require to like Con Ed hours? Not that even with Con Ed hours, it's like, I mean, as a paramedic, some Con Ed hours are more meaningful than others.
Oh, sure.
But like, how do they ensure that practitioners are relevant and keeping up with the times?
Absolutely. So they require every 2 years here in Illinois to get 30 continuing education units, and they have to be spread out amongst different categories.
Okay.
So there's safety, there's ethics, there's something else that's required, and then the rest you can sort of do what you want. So,
sure.
And I think a certain number has to be herbs education, and the other has to be some sort of acupuncture technique.
Okay.
So because there's always new research coming out, new techniques being developed, new strategies and herbal remedies being developed. And and that's what I like too. I like learning.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like school, but I enjoy learning.
Are these opportunities that are brought to you by your employer, or do you have to seek them out yourself? Like, are they conferences? Like, what? How?
Kind of both.
Okay.
So you can do some online ones, which is more popular these days with the COVID pandemic, right? Right. But most of the time, you can study whatever you want as long as you're fulfilling those categories.
Yeah.
My last employer required us to study certain ones because we were very fertility focused, like I was saying, and we can go back to that if you like. I never was interested in fertility in school. I know a lot of my colleagues were like, oh, I just want to help women have babies and go into the labor naturally and all this other stuff, but that just didn't appeal to me at the time. But because of my extra training in it for the job I worked last, I've gotten really good at it.
Wow.
So I enjoy it now because I was forced to be good at it.
Okay.
But I've had a lot of success with helping people get pregnant, flip breached babies using acupuncture.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. It's crazy.
You would think like you would need manual therapy to do that, but with acupuncture?
You would think that. And it really wasn't even so much acupuncture as the moxibustion.
Oh.
On the pinky toe.
What?
I know. It's crazy, but I've seen it too many times to refute
took
it.
A pause right there. I'm like, on the pinky toe.
On the pinky toe. Yeah, that's the funniest thing is like the tiny little corner of your pinky toenails. You do some moxibustion there. It injects the energetic. Remember I was saying like form and function. So yin and yang, right?
Yeah.
Yang is functionality, like the energetics that drive your body, right?
Okay.
Form, yin is the physical body.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So when you're injecting some functionality into a system, that specific point goes to the uterus.
Wow.
And it enables the uterus to reposition the baby.
Is it the point that makes it form or function, or what makes it what part of it is form and what part of it is function? Like, is it what you're doing to it is function? Like, moxibustion is always function no matter what point?
Well, so that's the dynamic of yin and yang. Like, everything is yin and yang, right?
Yeah.
There's just so the sky is yang, the earth is yin, right? In the body, like you have yin and yang organs, right? So you have solid organs, you have hollow organs, right? So you can break it down to every micro part of the body
Okay.
as yin and yang, because it's intertwined.
Twined,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one becomes the other. It's oh man, we're really getting rained on.
we'll be okay. We'll be good. We can. I have one more decent question. Are you okay?
That's a problem. All right, so where were we?
Yin and yang, and then like you
Oh,
can
yin
break
and
it
yang.
down to the microscopic world if you really need.
I might be getting too far down the rabbit hole with that, but yeah, with turning a baby, what we're doing is we're injecting.
If you want to move this closer.
Oh, my butt's just getting fully soaked. There, we'll do this.
Better?
Yeah, I think we're okay here.
Okay.
It'll roll down the other side. We knew this might rain today, and it's definitely raining. So the heat energy that we're using from Moxa, remember you're burning, it's emitting a far infrared
Mhm.
signature, so that heat energy gets absorbed. That is pure yang energy.
Okay.
So like if you're saying the sun versus the moon, the sun is yang.
Yeah,
Right? That is
yeah.
the most yang you can ever get.
Okay.
Because it's pure energy, right? So so when you're putting yang into a system, you are increasing its functionality.
Okay.
And that's what moxibustion is all about. So,
Okay.
So with turning a baby that's malpositioned, that point goes to the uterus through some internal connections.
Okay.
Yeah,
I see
so
that.
That's
I get
kind
that.
of, yeah.
I mean, if you were to so I guess that's amazing how it's effective for something as difficult of a topic to tackle as infertility.
Yes, yeah.
It's huge.
It's huge. I mean, it's usually in conjunction, and the science supports it in conjunction with modern
Okay.
fertility treatments. Acupuncture just helps tremendously.
Yeah, and I guess like I'm sure they'd rather gravitate towards that rather than doing is it in vivo? Yeah.
Yeah, in vitro, in vivo, yeah.
Okay, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Nice to have options.
What's really cool, my neighbor upstairs is an embryologist.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So how are your conversations like?
We haven't gotten too deep into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'll let you know. You might want to interview him next.
If you could, like long-term goal, like design your own practice,
Mm.
are there any other practitioners that you'd like to include in that practice to be a
You
more
mean from other disciplines?
any discipline? It could be like the
Ah.
most comprehensive clinic, like I hate to say one-stop shop, but like a comprehensive
Yeah.
clinic.
Well, I like to consider myself a generalist as an acupuncturist because I can treat
Okay.
pain and like internal. So it's sort of because again it's a holistic medicine. So I guess if I were to team with a Western medical physician as a generalist,
Wow.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Because I can't prescribe Western medicine. Or
So you still see the
yes, there's
effectiveness of Western medicine.
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a place for everything.
exactly right. Then I think the melding of the two.
That's fine.
That's fine.
there's
Okay. is a good combination, especially coming from an integrated clinic that I worked in
Yeah.
before, working with a chiropractor and a nutritional therapy team and massage.
Yeah.
Um,
Are there any conferences where they focus on integrated medicine, where they bring people from both worlds?
Probably.
Right. Shouldn't
must
there
be.
be?
I'm sure there is. I haven't gone to any conferences as a professional.
Yeah.
I've been too busy. My whole focus getting out of school is to get
As much
experience.
experience. Yeah.
And I joined a clinic that gave me a lot of hands-on experience and has propelled me to where I am now,
Okay.
which is why I went there. I want to help put this medicine, and not on the map. It's already on the map, but I mean,
Yeah.
I want to get the word out. I want to spread this medicine. I want to help people, which is why I got into this field.
Yeah.
And I think that acupuncture has a huge role to play in that.
Yeah, and I feel like, and I learned this with every industry, it's like you don't have to be at the very top of the industry. Like you don't have to move into administration to make those changes. I
Right.
think on the day-to-day, and you find that patient that'll just spread the good word for you, and that I think that's how, like day by day, it's a slow process, but it's like...
It is, but our numbers are growing.
Yeah.
And again, that we're getting more and more recognition from Western medicine and from scientific studies. It's just a slow process. Studies take a while; they're expensive, and they have to be repeatable, and so people have to track them and check them to make sure that it stands up and it holds up and it's leading toward a conclusion that's appropriate and and correct, right? So it's just I celebrate every time a new study comes out because I'm like, yes, they're finally catching up to acupuncture. So acupuncture, the paradigm is different. Like the way they look at the body, the way they understand the body is so different. And because I was science-minded, getting into like that first day of school, I was a little worried I wasn't going to believe this. I'm like, is this? I'm like, because I knew I wanted to do it, and I'm like, I might not believe this stuff. I might be bullshit. But once I learned the construct under which it was developed, it is no less scientific. It's just a different language, right?
Okay.
And the rigor and the repeatability are the same. It's just a different way of talking about the body.
And so if you could design your own study, I mean, is there a way to study it? And is that going to differ from the way Western medicine is studied?
I think if you're looking for efficacy and effectiveness of acupuncture, you need to put it up against the modern equivalents, right? Instead of saying, does it work? Is it placebo? Put it up against like which one works better, acupuncture or say this pill, right? And if it's usually acupuncture with less side effects. Oh,
yeah, I don't know, but
did we just short your camera?
I have no idea.
Shit.
Well, this one's still going. So, I mean, that's pretty much all I had.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to, before we hop off?
I don't think so. I really appreciate the time to talk about that.
Same,
I mean,
same.
I'm passionate about what I do, so
yeah,
I love
saw
what I
that.
do. And, anytime that we can tell people about it, maybe get them interested in it.
Right.
Tell them it's not scary, and it's just the fear of the unknown. So the first treatment's usually a one-off throwaway.
Okay.
Because people are usually scared and afraid. So you're doing a very gentle, maybe fewer needles than you would want to really treat something.
Or you're just like, here, I'll eat the cost of this. You just come in
Pretty
and
much.
just try it out.
Yeah. Just to get them in the door and try it out, just to see that it's not as scary as it sounds.
Okay.
Because they're tiny, tiny needles. You shouldn't be in any pain after the initial pinch of the needle going in.
Okay.
Right? So initial stick, you might feel some heaviness where the needle is, but that's an increase of blood flow, right?
Yeah.
You might feel some traveling sensations, some tingling, some numbness, some heaviness, but it shouldn't be painful, right? And most people fall asleep. They find it very relaxing.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you wake up feeling better all around. Yeah.
Okay. Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
I'll see you guys in the next episode.